think I'm doing things. Trying a different approach now. I wanted to do another yammer. We'll see. Anyways, this morning I woke up and I saw an article, and it was about the Clearview AI folks. And the Canadian government has made a rule that they're not allowed to be shitty fucks, which is, a good position for the government to take. But I wanted to talk a little bit about, what it is, what it means, all that kind of stuff. And it really sort of falls under the greater image of privacy is an illusion that we kind of all share, like a shared delusion, but this is like a shared illusion. And the best thing that we can do is maintain that. So first off, like, for credential purposes, I work closely with the cybersecurity group in IT. Not like there's only one, but I do a lot of work on cybersecurity projects in various companies. I'm not a cybersecurity expert, but I'm like the next best thing in the sense of being someone who lives and breathes the cybersecurity stuff all the time. So I'm familiar with a lot of the topics that are relevant, and I think that gives me a bit of a unique perspective on things. So what Clearview AI is essentially it's a facial recognition software package. And when you're thinking about the image in your head of like the cops on the TV show, and they take the photo from a CCTV and they put it through their algorithm, and 8 seconds later it comes back with like, here is the perfect match, your DMV record is whatever. It's kind of like that, eerily like that, which is problematic because we don't want to be trusting our freedom to computers, because computers are flawed and shitty. Anyways, it's a facial recognition app. The way that they got their database was by scraping the public-facing side of the internet. I used to get pissy because people would get upset about like, those challenges on Facebook where it's like, here's a photo of me when I was 2, and here's a photo of me today, and isn't that so cool? And people would be like, oh my God, they can use facial algorithms so that you can like, know what you're going to look like in 10 years now. So, Russia now owns your life. And it's like, fuck off. If I have any public image up on the interweb, then Russia can find it, like, or whoever can find it. It's a bullshit argument. But this is exactly my point in all that is it's not, Facebook doesn't need to do algorithms to steal your likeness and persona. They actually do just fine by what we all put up and what we will continue to put up. Like, and that's the thing is we choose to do this, and there is no such thing as privacy. So it's all controlled. So anyways, Clearview AI built their database on scraped internet images, and then they started to market it to law enforcement agencies. Yay. Which is essentially making true that science fictiony vibe of the the idea of you've got a CCTV camera and you put it's Jim. So the I hate to have to say this. I have to get something out of my pocket. Sorry, poking me. I hate to have to say this, but I'm gonna have to tell you a little bit about why privacy matters and why I think it's an important thing that we have to maintain. First and foremost, privacy matters because, well, you know what? There was a book I read a long time ago when I was in college, actually. So a very long time ago, because I'm old AF, you millennials. The book was about a moment in time in IT security. There was a guy named Phil Zimmerman had written this tool called PGP, which stood for Pretty Good Privacy. It's an encryption program. And the thing was that it was better than what the US government could decrypt at the time. Obviously, and that's not true anymore, but they made it made a real challenge because it was a private person making a tool that would obfuscate what your government was able to view. And then this sparked a privacy debate about, well, what have you, and it all came down to, what do you have to hide? Um, that's a shitty argument. What do you have to hide? Um, the answer is fucking everything. Like, it's none of your business. If my grandma is sick, um, that's nobody's business but me and my grandma and whoever I choose to tell. If a law enforcement agency suddenly was to be curious about me, and it doesn't matter if it's evidence of a crime or not. It's nobody's fucking business. And if I'm sending an email to my grandma saying, "I hope you feel better," okay, that shouldn't be something I have to worry about obscuring. But given the nature of the watchdog state that we live in, I fucking do. So, you know, that's a shitty garbage thing. Um, what do you have to hide is everything about you that is not something that you want to share, right? The default position should always be, I am secure and private. If I choose, I go on Facebook and I choose to post my picture and go, yeah, it's public, anyone can see it. Fine, that's a decision I made. Um, but if I'm sending an email, that's not a public disclosure, and that's a very key difference. Um, that ability to invade is law enforcement likes to say that it's an important thing, right? How are we supposed to do our jobs in the digital reality of today if we don't violate all your rights? And the answer is, the same was true when we invented the fucking telephone. If I could communicate with my mafiosa cohorts or whatever and call them on the phone and be like, hey, I want to do evil things and kill lots of people, how is the government supposed to know what I'm doing? So the way they got around that was things like, warrants for phone taps. Which, I don't have a problem with the idea of, if you can establish probable cause, then you can apply for a warrant to crack somebody's personal emails open, and potentially, if they're encrypted, try to decrypt them. Like, I don't have a problem with that, because that's gone through some process, and there's a judge who has said, yes, I agree, this is actually a thing that we should be doing. I'm okay with that. Um, the whole concept of breaking communications isn't necessarily evil. Alan Turing, who is a god to IT people, and the subject of the movie The Imitation Game, which was a fun, weirdly fun movie, because, like, it's nerds doing nerd things, but it's done in a fun way. Anyways, blah blah blah. The whole concept of the breaking of the Enigma cipher, which was what the Germans were using to communicate all of their movements. When Turing built a computer that could crack the Enigma cipher, and they found a way to do to break these messages. They were very smart about it, and they didn't brag about it. They didn't go, oh, hey, Germany, we totally got your fucking Enigma machines, bam, because that would have defeated the purpose. So, the truth is, if the government can break into an encrypted session, they're not going to talk about that too terribly loudly, because it's against their better interests. Um, anyways, so this all relates to privacy laws. And I'm in Canada, so I'm going to talk primarily about Canadian laws. But essentially, we get, when we talk about businesses and privacy, we understand that if I'm working for a company, and they've got a formula for a new painkiller that's going to make them billions of dollars and turn a whole nation into junkies, Pfizer. If they have that formula, it is their property, their private property. And I can't just be like, well, I think I'll take this and give this to my cousin who runs a meth lab and is a chemist, and now we can make our own super crack or whatever the fuck, right? Like, there's an understanding that things that people own are private, and things that corporations own are private. But there's, you know, there's two sides to that, in that I say there's an understanding, but there's fucking not, because anything that you describe as common knowledge or whatever is not common knowledge, and it's particularly so in the world of cybersecurity and the related things. I worked for a company that they were unveiling a new building they were about to build, and it was all just internal to the company at first. And they sent out like a PowerPoint presentation, like, check out all this cool stuff. All, the building's going to be so beautiful and so fresh and so funky. And like 200 people that worked in that company forwarded that on to the local newspaper without thinking, like, this is probably not a thing I should be doing. So the local newspaper was like, we got 200 copies of this PowerPoint presentation that is all very much private information. So we're not going to act on it. But like, that's, people don't understand privacy at a deep level. We understand sort of a little bit. We know that it's important, but we don't necessarily do it right, for want of a better term. And this is why companies have things like records management policies and records management teams, and there's an entire series of software tools designed to like tag and validate the level of confidentiality on a document, for example, and that we're still just like learning how to do this in the business world. But you basically can say, well, this document has sensitive information, and then when somebody else opens it, they're like, oh, this is sensitive information, and our policy says that I'm not allowed to send this to anyone else, and so I shouldn't. But also, you can have tools that will say, this document is flagged as being sensitive. I'm not emailing this out, you dink. You need to get, these are the 5 people who can actually send this outside of the boundaries of the company, for example. Just as an example. Anyways, personally identifying information is a little bit of a gray area. I'm going to click this link so that I can give you the quote exactly. Where the fuck is it? Just go to the goddamn link. There we go. So this is actually from the U.S. Department of Labor website. Guidance on the protection of personal identifiable information is the title of the document. Where's the definition? Here we go. Personal identifiable information is defined as any representation of information that permits the identity of an individual to whom the information applies to be reasonably inferred by either direct or indirect means. Further, PII is defined as information that directly identifies an individual, by which an agency intends to identify specific individuals in conjunction with other data elements, i.e., indirect identification. So what this means is my name is private information. I can choose to give it out. And in fact, most companies don't view your name as something that they need to actively protect because it's what they call business card information. But I'll go you a different direction. Let's say if you work in an office, you might have one of those card swipey things, right? And you go beep, and it opens the door for you. That data is something that you wouldn't necessarily think of as personally identifying, but I can associate, if I do the backtracking, I can say, well, I know that this card was used to open up this bathroom, and I know that that card has been given to Jim. So I know that Jim went to the bathroom, presumably didn't give his card to somebody else. Jim went to the bathroom. That is the intended purpose of that technology, right? So I can open and close doors. But the mining of that data can be very dangerous, essentially. And HR policies will talk about the whole concept, because if I, as a business, say, okay, well, you know what? Can't help but notice that Jim went to the bathroom 8 times yesterday, and this is bullshit. He doesn't have to pee that much. Maybe he should learn to have a bladder, or at least a stadium buddy that he brings to the office with him so he can pee in that. I mean, I'm being facetious, but it's happened. There has been lawsuits where people said, you've been fired because you're using the bathroom too much. And the person said, how the fuck do you know I'm using the bathroom too much? And they go, well, you swiped into the bathroom 8 times just yesterday. And then that person goes, well, that's actually bullshit. That's not cool. You can't fire me for that. So this comes around to the idea of consent. wait, don't go anywhere. Consent is not, don't blow your head up. It's fucking consent. Get over it. This is a conversation we have to have in a bunch of different areas, and just, time to get the fuck used to it. So when it comes to consent in like the information usage concept, um, we exclusively give consent in a variety of ways. The most common one that we can think of is like the end user license agreement. That thing that pops up when we run an application installation process, and it's like, here's a whole bunch of legal shit, and you go, yes, I read it all, I promised you. Okay. Um, and it's terrible because that shit is important, and we don't read it because it's boring, right? And I'm not going to go into the whole thing. Jon Stewart did a great thing about I think it was about net neutrality, but it was all about how this is, a thing that we skip. And his joke was, you could embed the entire contents of Mein Kampf into an end user license agreement, and people would be like, I agree, fuck, get off my screen. But I've been bitten by this. When I first got, my first smartphone came with a flashlight, and I was like, well, that's awesome. And then my the second phone didn't. So I was like, well, there's got to be a flashlight app, obviously. So I went and, typed in flashlight. Okay, yes, give access to this, give access to that, not reading it like it's an end user license agreement. And it turned out that the application I installed was from a Chinese company that, if I had knew anything about it, like what they were asking for permission for was like, I want to see your contacts. I want to know all of your photographs. I want every piece of information about you, which is fucking gross. And when I read a thing about like, hey, maybe you don't want to have these flashlight apps, I was like, well, surely not me. I'm smart. Oh, fuck, that totally me. Uninstall. Anyways, um, the consent concept is, I give my consent for data to be used in a particular way. And in business, what you have is, and you see this all the time, is people will have I want to access your photograph. And then there's a blurb about, this is what I will use that information for. And I go, okay. And then that's me giving consent um, for that particular use. If a business then does things like monitoring your bathroom usage instead of just allowing you access to a space, that is a use of the data that you have not consented to, and it's a privacy violation. Um, and I mean, I get, as soon as you say the word consent, everyone gets all freaked out. But it's actually pretty pretty reasonable concept, and you can be a tear soggy sad boy and go, oh, now I need consent. I need to have evidence of everything that happens for the sexing that I'm going to sex. Yeah, you fucking do, because it turns out that we're not necessarily good at knowing when it's okay to proceed and when it's not, and consent is a valid thing. So it's the same in business as it is um, in your personal life. And you know, theoretically, yes, you could have a series of check boxes that, is it okay if I move forward with my wiener? Yes, but that's not how the world is. And quit fucking pretending it is. Oh my god, I need to get a signed witnessed affidavit every time I want to kiss a girl. No, no, you don't. You have to have their enthusiastic consent, the same as they have to have yours. Anyways, I'm off topic. Um, so consent is something that we sort of automatically understand, right? If you think about gossip, and your friend, you tell your friend to see something very personal, and they turn around and tell everybody, oh my god, Jim actually is a member of the evil anarchist movement. And if I get offended by the fact that they said that, I was like, you shouldn't have told Stacy, fuck, you shouldn't have told people about my being a crazy anarchist or my yeast infection or whatever the fuck. And yeah, Stacy shouldn't have fucking told. Um, that was Stacy violating my consent for information. I gave it to Stacy with the expressed need of privacy that she did not accept, and therefore, fuck you, Stacy. Fuck you hard. Um, anyway, so what did Clearview do? I'm gonna open up this link because it's pretty well put in here. The link I'm using is from the National Post. facial recognition tool used by RCMP deemed illegal, mass surveillance of unwitting Canadians. So the basically, where was it? In a report Wednesday with 3 provincial counterparts, Federal Privacy Commissioner Daniel Therian said the New York-based company's scraping of billions of images of people from across the internet was a clear violation of Canadians' privacy rights. Essentially, the technology allows for the collection of huge numbers of images from various sources that can help police officers, financial institutions, and other clients identify people. I'm not okay with any of those things, but I'm definitely not okay with and other clients. That's where it gets really, because if I pay enough money, I can violate your privacy and track you down and hunt you and kill you. Like that's probably not going to be all right. So where was I here? There's the argument. Well, it's all public information. Absolutely, they didn't break the law by breaking into Facebook and stealing information that was hidden. They didn't do any of that shit. They just took the publicly available information, ran algorithms against it, and there's nothing theoretically illegal about that, except that that's not what we agreed to. When we posted our information on Facebook, we didn't agree for it to be part of a facial recognition system. So that's where the lawsuit comes in. I live in Canada, as I said, so naturally we have the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, who we love to imagine as being stalwart and true protectors of the wild frontier, but in fact are just another fucking law enforcement agency doing shitty law enforcement agency things. That's the world we live in. So they, of course, signed up. They had, I think, 48 users from within the RCMP who were actively using this service. Just to clarify for a moment, all cops are bastards. I'm sorry if you're a cop and you feel bad about that. You are a bastard. You may be a great person, and you may take a lot of personal, professional pride in what you do. And I'm not saying that cops are not valuable. I'm saying that the service that you provide has stretched so far beyond the fucking mandates of what you should be doing, that you're now evil. And that's sorry about your luck for being evil like that, but you are. And before anyone goes, oh, but good cops, there's a joke that I love, and that's how many good cops does it take to change a light bulb? None, because good cops don't change anything. This is the problem I have, and that's a topic for another time, but I just wanted to get it out there. Yes, I'm a crazy anarchist who doesn't support the idea of a police state. That's so weird, right? Anyway, so this is the whole slippery slope argument you get into, and I don't like slippery slope arguments, but where's the line between trying to catch a terrorist and trying to ensure that someone is being surveilled, harassing protesters, for example. And that alone is a funny thing, right? The idea of harassing protesters, it seems like everyone is completely okay with harassing protesters as long as they're the protesters they don't like, right? So if you're a Canadian patriot and you're like, oh, they need to surveil on Antifa and stop them from Antifa-ing and blowing up cities and shit, you're 100% okay with that. When Native people are protesting pipelines and you're, sharing memes about, well, there's a good way to get them out of the train tracks, just hit them with a train. That's horrible and gross. And it's no different than when people on the left are like, hey, check it out. There was an anti-mask rally and the cops came and fucked up the people. Yay. That, I get it. It's, we have that Schadenfreude that comes from Schadenfreude, seeing people who we disagree with being caught being shitty and getting hurt or arrested or whatever. Like that's cool. I get it, but it's not okay. And the government has a history of targeting people and using every means at their disposal to fuck with people, even when they can't. I have a buddy who was fucked with by the cops in a small town here in where I live. I don't live in the town. I live in the big city, but cops went after him and were like, they assumed that because he was friends with a guy who was a legitimate criminal and a piece of shit, they were like, well, obviously you're a criminal and a piece of shit. And so every time he was in that town, which was fairly often because he had business there, the cops would be, throwing him up against the car, threatening to arrest them, all that, the shit that cops do. And they would show up at his house in a whole different city and be like, haha, we're fucking with you. What are you going to do about it? Maybe you should just stop being a criminal, which again, he wasn't a criminal. So this is the problem is the balance of stopping a serial rapist versus harassing the public. That's not a balance that we've ever managed to properly strike. So that's why it's a concern. We as people, we expect a reasonable amount of privacy and consent that we can control over that privacy. And the reality is law enforcement does not give fuck number one about that because all cops are bastards. That's a thing. Sorry if it hurts your feelings. That hurts my feelings. Whatever. Anyways, the argument always comes back from the police of how are we supposed to do our job? I mentioned that earlier. Like, how are we supposed to do our job? By doing your fucking job, by investigating, by protecting. And let's be honest here. A lot of the time, your job is fucking bullshit. If I have a GPS on my phone and it shows that I moved in excess of the speed limit through a road area, that means that I broke the law and I am a criminal who has been speeding and should be punished accordingly. Except that the only way that you know this is by grabbing this GPS data and using it in ways that aren't what I'm consenting to, because I'm not consenting to law enforcement surveillance of my GPS data. This is exactly a good example is when if I drive and I go too fast and there's no camera that saw me do it and all that kind of shit, and I get a ticket for it, that is bullshit. That is somebody violating my privacy, a law enforcement agency doing so. Or it could be the company that I'm getting my GPS service through violating my privacy by sharing information with law enforcement agencies. However that works. Either way, it's bullshit. What we really need to do, and this is probably a whole nother yammer that I'm not going to go into too deeply right now, but we need to reassess and stop and fucking think about how much law enforcement is the right amount of law enforcement. I believe that there is a need for law enforcement. I believe that the role of police in performing detective type of work, so finding a serial killer, finding a rapist, finding someone who beat 8 shades of shit out of a kid, those are all valid things. Finding somebody for driving too fast can be a valid thing. If you're driving 80 through a school zone, okay, you probably deserve to get a fucking ticket. But if you're driving 85 on an 80 zone, fuck right off. That's not seriously a thing. Like, and the idea that we use policing as a revenue agency to cover policing costs is stupid, because what we are seeing is we're not solving crimes. All that extra money isn't making us safer. It's paying for more services to police us, and to nag us about the little things like jaywalking. I'll admit I'm a jaywalker. I will jaywalk, but I do it in a way that is safe because I'm capable of using these two delicious little eyes of mine to go, look, there are no cars coming. I am safe to cross this street. Standing here is at this point just stupid. If I cross the street and I get hit by a car, that's bad. And it's bad from a public safety perspective. It's bad from my personal health. It's just bad. So I'm fine with if the cops saw me jaywalking in a way that was putting others at risk, fine. But if I cross the street when no fucking traffic is coming and it's jaywalking crackdown month because they want to earn up some revenue, that's not okay. That is anything but okay. Anyways, my point is, and my larger point will eventually be expressed, and that is that we need to rein in what we consider to be police activities. Um, and that's, when I talk about defunding the police, I'm not talking about getting rid of police. You have a protest that has a large number of people on two sides. You need police in the middle to make everybody safe and to ensure that any bad actors don't get to act badly, or at least, are controlled in how badly they act. I'm for that. I'm 100% for that, for the protection of people. I'm 100% behind investigation of crime and trying to stop crime that are actual crimes and not bullshit. Um, but I'm not okay with the idea of uh, government tracking and of government or of police using poverty as a weapon or race as a weapon. And before you get into it, yeah, I fucking said it and I fucking meant it. Um, if the same law applies to two different groups differently, whether it's on paper or statistically can be seen, that ain't fair. And fuck your hat. Anyways, my point is you can't spy on us if it makes your job easier. Um, and yeah, the benefit is you might stop some terrible thing from happening, but you also have to stop viewing every single fucking citizen as a criminal. You are there to protect and serve. And I know that's not a thing you do anymore. Like literally, I don't think it's even a slogan that they put on their fucking cars anymore. Because they're not there to protect and serve. They are there to protect and serve the status quo. Anyways, I'm way off topic here. It's important that we protect our digital footprint. It's important that we continue to ensure that we have consent, that we have a voice in how our information and our identifying information is used. I'm putting this video on the YouTubes. Um, that means that it's public. I will check the public box. That does not mean that someone should extrapolate from that, all of the nitty gritty details to find out who I am and come punch me in the nose because they're a cop and they think that me saying all cops are bastards is a problem. That's not right. And it's not about like my nose. It's about my fucking rights and your rights and everybody else's rights. Um, Anyways, the lawsuit's important for a bunch of reasons, but one of the reasons is um, it's proof that I guess it's not a lawsuit. What it was brought up before, was it the where is it, the privacy watchdogs brought up this as a case, um, providing a report to the federal privacy commissioner. So kind of like a lawsuit. We'll refer to it as a lawsuit because that it works. But essentially, what it shows is that the system still works. I'm not a system guy, believe me, but the federal privacy commissioner, by taking the stand that they took, is essentially showing that they are not an agent of the state. They are an agent of the Constitution of Canada, and that Constitution is a reflection of the rights and responsibilities of the people. So they didn't just go, well, yeah, that'll make law enforcement easier. Go for it. They said, no, this is not acceptable. That's one for us, which is rare these days. So I'm happy that piece of the system worked correctly. The reality is that this is a really important time. Capitalism's having a fuck of a go right now, and whatever happens, whether we fix the system and everything becomes the next billion years of glorious capitalist wonderland, or if it's the dawn of our new empire of transnational lesbian anarchism or whatever the fuck happens. Like, these are important times. As a Canadian, it's a little bit weird because our origin story, if you think about it in terms of like superheroes, our origin story is a mutant where you wake up with powers. And in our case, we can mostly control them. We just woke up one day with the ability to like shoot laser beams out of our eyeballs, but we don't need ruby quartz to stop us from destroying everything in the world. We just go, oh, there, that works. Cool. I don't have to shoot people unless I want to. The American origin story, though, is more like a mad scientist experimenting on himself. in the idea of like, you know, the system that existed at the time, the British parliamentary system that colonized America. Um, that was the thing that they were fighting against, and they were the mad scientists trying to devise a new experiment. Well, you know, the American experiment. Oh, that worked out. Um, so one of the things that's important in the American experiment and why America successfully was able to sort of, you know, establish itself as a real thing, and to stay that way for a long time, was their constitution. It was the idea of defining those founding values that were important to them at the time. I have huge problems with that, and another yammer eventually, in the concept of those values can change. Sorry about the world. Um, but yeah, so they, you know, we have to think about, as whatever the next step is, we have to always be looking at what are our values, what is important, and what do we want to embrace as right and wrong, right? And yeah, okay, moral relativism, fuck your face. I'm not getting into that talk right now. Um, you know, this boils down to, are we heroes or are we villains? If we're a mad scientist in a lab, are we doing good work or bad? Are we anti-heroes? You know, are we okay with crushing privacy as long as it stops bad people from doing bad things? You know, aka the Punisher, who will go way beyond the rule of law to stop the bad guy. And I love me some fucking Punisher comics, but that doesn't mean I want to live in the Punisher's world. Um, and that's a thing. You know, it's important that we understand not just what we would like in a small microcosm of, you know, I would like to be the Punisher and I would like to stop crime, and I know I would do all right. Um, what matters is what our society should be, and these are the bigger and grander statements that come in. So the Second Amendment in the States is a fine example. It is not the intention, in my opinion, of the founding fathers that every single person owns a gun and is prepared to kill whoever the fuck shows up in their property. I think the intention of the founding fathers was to ensure that the people would not be the subjects of a government that is oppressive and tyrannical, and that having access to guns and not refusing access to guns to people was the best way that they could come up with to ensure that. I support that conceptually, by the way. I am a leftist, but I have nothing against guns. I have everything against stupid gun laws that are, you know, like you can't have a fucking WMD. I'm sorry. That just makes sense. Stop trying to have WMDs, people. Again, I'm off topic. Um, what I'm getting at though is it's where we're at right now. Some kind of change is coming. What, you know, that's always true, and I feel like some kind of change is going to be a pretty significant amount of change. But no matter what, whatever we go and do next, whether it's fixing the current system, stripping it and creating a new system, altering it to you know, better meet our needs, whatever that is, we always need to keep in mind who we want the royal we to be. And I hope that validating our or violating our privacy and making it so that law enforcement and corporations and whoever else can't fuck with us and can't you know, use us as chess pieces. I hope that that continues to be a thing that we do, and I'm glad that the Clearview case went the way it did, because it is a message that at least here in Canada we're not okay with this, and we're not going to fucking allow it. Our RCMP, they took a shot, they failed. Privacy commissioner said, "Fuck you, RCMP, you did a wrong," and that was the right answer, and that makes me happy. Anyways, thank you for paying attention. Assuming that I actually post this, this is the first time I've done something quite like this. Last night I did a yammer by myself, and I didn't have a script. I used my webcam, and it was a lot shittier. But the lack of the script was me going a lot. So this is all done offline this time, and then I'll, you know, maybe I'll stream it or throw it on YouTube or whatever the fuck I do. Anyways, I'll look at it and see if it's any good. But thank you. Thank you for paying attention and I don't know, like, subscribe, whatever the fuck you're supposed to say now. So there's that.